Hello, welcome back. This is video number 3. We're going to work on chapter 6. So on the Allied Health iLearn page, it's under chapter 6, chart 1. Okay, if you click on that, it'll download it and you'll get this. All right, which is a Word doc that has chapter 6, chart 1. So we've taken all the abbreviations in chapter 6 and split them up into 11 different charts. Easier to tackle that way. So we left off at activities of daily living, which is what occupational therapists specialize in. Next is ADM. This is admission. Okay, like if you are admitted into an ER, admitted to the hospital, or you get a room in the hospital as opposed to just the ER. You can have admission to a surgical suite, something like that. AED. This is an automated external defibrillator. So I went ahead and pulled one of my AEDs that we'll use. Okay, so a couple of things. Every AED is only going to have 2 real buttons on it that you'll use. The power button, and then the charge button, which is to give them a shock. Okay, and then there's only one port, which you connect defibrillator pads to. So the defibrillator pad, and it plugs, and you end up plugging in there. Okay, so this is an AED, an automated external defibrillator. So what that means is you don't have to think about it when you defibrillate somebody, meaning if you were a paramedic or a physician, you would have to determine how many joules of energy you would need in order to shock the patient appropriately. Okay, with an AED, you don't have to worry about that. It just automatically does it. All you have to do is follow its prompts, okay, and follow what it says. Press buttons when it says to press buttons. Don't touch the patient when it says not to touch the patient. If you can follow directions, you'll use it quite well. So an AED is used for when the heart is beating out of sync. So if it's in a shockable rhythm, meaning that it's a rhythm where it's effective to actually deliver an electrical shock to, it will help restart your heart, essentially. Okay. AHA, this is American Hospital Association. They specialize in, patient advocacy in hospitals. They make sure that the hospital is doing what they're supposed to be doing, advocating for the patients, making sure that there's quality of care for the patients as well. So that's AHA, American Hospital Association. AIDS. AIDS comes from HIV. HIV is a disease that can spread through blood or bodily fluids. And risk factors for this are sharing needles, having unprotected sex, birthing a child from a mother that has HIV. And HIV is the virus that infects the person. And then when it infects all of their immune cells and they don't have an immune system left, they wind up having AIDS. And AIDS is generally fatal, not necessarily because of the infection, but because of not having an immune system to fight off any other infections. So I found this little AIDS video from National Geographic online. And unfortunately, this is kind of an epidemic. This is spread throughout the world. It's an issue. It's not curable. Once you get it, you always will have it. Okay, so I hope you enjoy.
About 37 million people around the world are currently living with AIDS, making the disease one of the worst pandemics in modern history. AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, is a disease in which the human immune system is severely impaired. It's caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, and is the last stage of the virus's infection. HIV attacks by entering the bloodstream and attaches to helper T or CD4 cells, a type of white blood cell. CD4 cells are responsible for fighting infections. First, HIV attaches itself to a CD4 cell and fuses with it. Then, HIV releases its genetic material into the CD4 cell, which combines with the cell's DNA. This allows the virus to produce more HIV proteins inside the cell. The proteins are then packaged and released to attack other CD4 cells. Without HIV medicines, an individual's infection may spread and within 10 to 12 years advance to become AIDS. This decreased immunity makes patients with AIDS vulnerable to a number of diseases, including infections, dementia, and cancer. Scientists believe that HIV originated in West Central Africa, where a similar virus was found in chimpanzees and gorillas. Around the turn of the 20th century, the virus was transmitted to humans due to the handling of chimpanzee meat. The virus then spread from the African continent during the mid-1960s through a single carrier, eventually making its way around the world. In 1982, scientists labeled the illness as AIDS, and the following year identified the virus as HIV. Ever since, about 77.3 million people around the world have contracted HIV, with the majority of affected individuals living in countries with very few resources. Scientists are working to one day develop a cure for AIDS. In the meantime, advancements in biotechnology, plus increased awareness, prevention, and access to healthcare, are saving many lives and may hold the key to finally exterminating the disease.
All right. So that just gives you a little background to it. It's very serious. It's effectively kind of um, a death warrant, kind of. They're finding HIV suppressant drugs now that are effective, but unfortunately, the ones that already have it and it's already attacked all their immune system, there's not a whole lot they can do. So, moving on to bigger, better things, AM, or AM, it can be uppercase or lowercase. So, this is essentially morning or before noon, right? When you wake up, it's in the AM. When you go to sleep, it's in the PM. AMA, this has different this has two different meanings. The first one I'm going to talk about is American Medical Association. So this is very similar to the American Hospital Association. So they work with patient, I guess, quality of patient care across all practitioners, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're trained in what they're doing, that kind of thing. The next is against medical advice. So if I have a patient that I respond to on the ambulance, and say they have a medical problem that should be seen. Say they fractured their arm, right? They broke their arm, all right? And generally something like that needs to be seen in a hospital or ER, or at least in urgent care in the very least, okay, depending on how severe it is. So if that person doesn't want to go to the hospital, maybe they want to finish their workday, maybe they want to finish whatever fun they were having, and they don't want to go to the hospital at that point in time, they would refuse care against medical advice. So you have some sort of clinician telling them that this is what they should be doing, and it's against your medical advice for them to refuse care at that point in time. You can also, when you're admitted in the hospital, if somebody wants to leave, they want to go home, they don't feel it's necessary, they can sign themselves out against medical advice, or AMA. Generally, there's forms to sign regarding that. Not usually a good thing. Amalgam, so this is abbreviated as AMAL. This is, it's technically, it means a mixture, but we call amalgam specifically like a tooth filling, like the silver ones that we used to get. That has amalgam. It's made out of amalgam. So that's just the word for it. Okay, AMB, this means to ambulate or to walk. Okay, Ambulate, A-M-B, that means to walk around. Okay. If somebody is ambulatory, that means they're able to walk. If they're non-ambulatory, that means they're not able to walk. AMT, this is for amount. You've probably seen this on your check stubs, like your receipts when you go shopping. The amount due, AMT, is usually what they abbreviate to. ANA, American Nurses Association. So these it's very similar to like how the medical association is and the hospital association, only for nurses. Okay. ANS, autonomic nervous system. Now this is fun. It's a lot of fun. So I have a little video, and it's crash course, so it might go kind of fast. But ANS, autonomic nervous system.
No matter what you're a fan of, you can probably think of two characters who fit the description. Holmes and Watson, Brennan and Booth, Kirk and Spock, Ron and Hermione. They're close, they understand each other in ways that others don't, and you really can't picture one without the other. But when stuff happens, they usually react in different ways. Like if you're snooping around Hogwarts at night and you come across some beastie, the smart money's on Hermione to come up with a spell that saves the day, while Ron probably standing there with his mouth open. And when Sherlock starts to go crazy because there hasn't been a fiendishly clever jewel heist or whatever for him to figure out, you can count on Watson to calm him down. Mostly. My brother John, who is a writer of books, will tell you that these characters are foils. They're not opposites exactly, they're contrasts. And the more you see them together, the more they seem to complement or round one another out. And that is basically your autonomic nervous system in a nutshell. Your autonomic system is the branch of your peripheral nervous system that regulates the functions of your internal organs, like your heart and stomach, and also controls your smooth and cardiac muscles and your glands. All things that you do not consciously control. So yes, you could say it has a lot of power over you. But the funny, or maybe confusing thing about this system is that its effects on your organs and muscles and glands are by no means consistent. Not at all. At any given moment, whether you happen to be totally relaxed or completely flipping your wig, your autonomic system is constantly making involuntary, fine-tuned adjustments to your body based on what signals your central nervous system is picking up. This could mean changing your body temperature, sending extra blood to a particular area, slowing your heartbeat, or tweaking your stomach secretions. Its effects change depending on the situation you're in, and also which part of your autonomic system is in charge at that moment. Because this weird little corner of your nervous system that keeps you alive is actually run by two competing interests. Two divisions that serve the same organs, but they create opposite effects in them, battling it out back and forth to either excite your body's functions or subdue them. One of them is dedicated to amping you up and preparing you for activity. That's your sympathetic nervous system. And the other one talks you down and effectively undoes what its foil did. And that is the parasympathetic nervous system. Together, they are what make your body experience stress, fear, relaxation, and defiance, courage and cowardice, panic and peace. If there's an epic novel going on in your body right now, it is probably being written by these two. Let's talk about names for a minute. One of the two divisions of your autonomic nervous system is called the sympathetic system. It sounds kind of nice, doesn't it? It's like understanding and calming and telling you that it's not so bad after all. Wrong! Contrary to its comforting name, the sympathetic system is what sounds your internal alarm bells. It's the hardware behind the famous fight or flight response. It is synonymous with stress. If the sympathetic is for fight or flight, the parasympathetic is for resting and digesting. It's responsible for maintaining your body and conserving energy for later. I recognize that this is confusing, but when you explore the anatomy of these two systems, like we're going to do today, they start to make a little more sense. Because even though their basic components are essentially the same, their physical structures turn out to be different in a few really important ways. And those differences can help explain why they act like the foils that they are, and why sometimes you feel more like Sherlock than Watson, or the other way around. First big difference, the nerves of these two divisions originate at different sites in your body. Your sympathetic fibers are thoracolumbar, meaning that they originate from between your thoracic vertebra, where your ribs attach, and the lumbar vertebra, just inferior to your ribs. Early anatomists saw how a network of nerves radiating from the middle of the spine spine like this could quickly coordinate the functions of many major organs at once, so it was called the sympathetic system, from the Greek words for feeling together. The nerve fibers of your parasympathetic system begin both above and below where the sympathetic ones do. They're craniosacral, meaning they sprout from the base of your brain and also from your sacral spinal cord, just superior to the tailbone. And because the roots of these nerve fibers basically frame the starting points of the sympathetic nerves, they were called parasympathetic, literally beside the sympathetic. Another difference between these two foils? They're ganglia. Unlike your sensory or motor neurons, where a single axon can reach all the way from your spinal cord to whatever muscle or touch receptor it works with, both parts of your autonomic system require two neurons in order to work. And those two neurons meet in ganglia, clusters of neuron cell bodies that house millions of synapses. But where these ganglia appear relate to their function and which division of the autonomic system they're serving. Sympathetic ganglia are found closer to the spinal cord because in those fight or flight moments of high excitement or activity, they need to be able to send a single message far and wide, like the bat signal. This way, excitatory signals traveling into a ganglion near the spine, ganglion being the singular of ganglia, can trigger action potentials in a whole bunch of other neurons that lead to many different effectors, like the heart and lungs and stomach and adrenal glands. By contrast, most parasympathetic ganglia are found way out from the spine, near or even inside of their effector organs. Because this system is responsible for taking care of particular functions only when you have the time and energy to do it, like digesting food or excreting waste, it uses more specific strategic signals. It's more like Commissioner Gordon calling Batman on the bat phone one-on-one just to talk about how things are going and, whether Alfred's doing okay after his meningitis. It's private conversation. Not everybody needs to be involved. Anyway, because the ganglia of these two divisions appear in different places in your body, it also makes sense that their neurons themselves have slightly different forms, namely the length of their axons. Now, ganglia can be kind of complex. It actually comes from the Greek word for a knot in a string, so when dealing with neurons around these structures, we look at the fibers before they run into the ganglion as well as after they come out of it. Understandably enough, the axon lengths of the neurons before the ganglion are called the preganglionic fibers, and the ones coming out are postganglionic. The key here is that in the sympathetic system, the preganglionic fibers are much shorter than the postganglionic ones, which makes sense when you think about it because the sympathetic ganglia are really close to the spinal cord and the axons don't have or need very far to go from the central nervous system, but they do have a lot of distance to cover on the other side of the ganglion in order to reach their effectors, so naturally the fibers leading out of the ganglia are a lot longer. And foils being what they are, the reverse is of course true for the parasympathetic system. Since parasympathetic ganglia are so close to or even inside of their effector organs, the preganglionic fibers are a lot longer. They extend from the cranium and sacrum, where they start, out to the lungs or liver or bladder, wherever their effector is, where they reach their ganglion. From there, the postganglionic fibers are super short, just long enough to communicate with their effector. So once again, it's anatomy and physiology. The structure of each of these systems is related to its function. The sympathetic nervous system is set up in such a way that even a small stress signal sent down one path could trigger a response in many effectors at once, which is one reason why your reaction to a sudden stressful event can feel so all-encompassing. By the same token, the resting and digesting that's overseen by the parasympathetic system doesn't require urgent, all-hands-on-deck communication. If you need to process a burrito or take a nap or maybe a trip to the bathroom, it can communicate with the organs involved one-on-one. But still, none of this tells us how these systems do what they do, how these nerves communicate with your organs and muscles and glands in times of either stress or relaxation. We'll start that next week with a white-knuckle ride through your sympathetic nervous system, so between now and then, rest up. For now...
All right. So, autonomic nervous system basically takes care of all of your automatic responses in your body, right? It's made up of the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches. So, controls a lot. All right. Now, I think that should be plenty for this video. So make sure you understand what the abbreviations are, what they stand for. If you have any questions, please let me know. My email is bartonj@dearbornschools.org. Thank you.